When it comes to getting the deal done, Xbox is considering the nuclear option. Go big or go home is what they like to say, and Microsoft's considering taking its Activision acquisition and going home. Well, you might have thought we would get through another week without a whole bunch of news related to the acquisition. Well, take a seat, my friends, because actually it kicks off with the 38th country actually approving the deal. So we got word this week that in South Korea, they are saying, look, we're going to approve this deal for Microsoft to spend $69 billion to acquire Activision, and they did it unconditionally, which is just about as good as it gets for Microsoft, because it means they didn't have to do anything. And so I guess you could say, look, they looked at what the EU is forcing them, and they probably said something like, as long as you do that here, it's perfectly fine, and we will consider this just done. And so that marks the 38th country to approve the deal. Keep in mind that many of those countries are in the EU, so it's not 38 individual countries have approved the deal, but as a collective, it accounts for 38 countries. Now, the big news that is coming out here is coming from Bloomberg, and it's related to the CMA. So as of right now, the CMA is the biggest hiccup in the way because they are further down the road than the FTC. Yes, the FTC could present a massive hurdle, but as of right now, they have not presented that as a hurdle, unlike the CMA, which presented its opposition and then said, nope, we're not going to do this. So Microsoft Smith, not Sams, I am Sams, Microsoft's Brad Smith, I am Brad Sams, not Brad Smith, is going to the UK to talk to the Chancellor over this Activision deal. And the Chancellor, might I remind you, has already expressed that they're a little bit concerned about how the CMA kind of went about this. And yeah, so Brad Smith is like, hey, I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to go do what I do best and go talk face to face, because let's be honest, face to face conversations like this, especially in these negotiations, especially in a deal as big as this, is worthwhile taking the private jet across the pond to go do that. So what are they really going to be talking about? Well, obviously they're going to be trying to get it to go through, but it sounds like, according to Bloomberg, Microsoft is considering the nuclear option to get this through. So according to Bloomberg, one extreme option could be to bypass the UK order and press ahead with the deal, or withdraw Activision from the UK market. One of the people said, confirming earlier reports by regulatory, another news outlet. Microsoft seriously might pull out of the UK. It would be one market. So I think there's an assumption here that Microsoft would get approval in the US. So if Microsoft got regulatory approval by every country but the UK, they are considering at least saying, like, look, okay, what would it actually look like for Microsoft to pull out? So, and there's a lot to this, because you might just say, Brad, they'll just not sell Call of Duty. Well, it doesn't quite work like that, because Microsoft isn't just an Xbox company, right? They have Windows, they have Office, they have PC partners, they have hardware partners. They have a lot going on in the UK. And so we don't quite know how this would play out. Does this mean that they would just pull out of Xbox? Maybe, but is that going to, like, there's a lot to this, because they could say, okay, we are going to pull Xbox out of this market. We are not going to sell Call of Duty here. We're not going to sell Game Pass. We're not going to do whatever. And then maybe try to work through it that way. They could also pull employees out of the country. So this has the potential to get super duper duper-de-doo messy, because UK might just dig its heels in and be like, look, okay, if you're not going to let us regulate your actions, then you have to completely leave the UK. Which would be massive, because that is tens of thousands of jobs across many different industries. Then, like, what did the government do for Windows and Office and productivity? And then on the other side, Microsoft's like, okay, well, maybe we gambled and lost here, because actually removing all those people, it's like, well, we can't just send them somewhere. They're going to have to just probably lay them off, which that's not going to go over well. And here we are. So, you know, kind of shooting from the hip here, it sounds like Microsoft is going to go over there, talk to the chancellor, and figure out what can we really do to get this approved, and be like, look, everybody else is approving this, all of your partners, all of your neighbors. We want to stay in the UK. We want to be good citizens of the country and be good business partners with the UK. How do we get this through? Give us the line items that if we accept and do this, then we absolutely will get it through. That might be the route that they are trying to go. But they could also just be saying this just to be saying this, right? Because the logistics, as I've just noted, of pulling out of the UK is not clean and simple. And so potentially by, hey, leaking this to the press, that they get that on the radar of the UK and say, like, Microsoft might do this. And then what do we do? And then we're losing out on there. Now, I don't want to get into the politics of Brexit, but there is an underlying fact that the UK has been on a downward trend from a GDP perspective. I believe that is quantifiable since they've joined Brexit, and having Microsoft, one of the largest companies on the planet, pull out and pull all of their employees out, that's not going to help things. I think we can hopefully all agree on that without digging into anything else. And so, yeah, Microsoft in the UK and the CMA, this one's far from over. Now, granted, if the US comes back and says there's no way either you could ever appease us to get this deal done, then this is less, their bargaining chip really falls aside. But I suspect that Microsoft believes they are going to get it through in the US. Actually, I believe they thought they were going to get it through in the UK. Remember some of the noise coming out with this. UK didn't have problems with Call of Duty. Again, it really dials down or dials back into only the cloud gaming aspect. That is the only thing that matters. South Korea clearly doesn't have a problem, but the UK still believes that there's a market that Microsoft will dominate, despite what the EU has said. And reminder, the EU said the reason why they accepted the deal is that by making Activision's games available on any platform, on any cloud gaming platform for the next 10 years, that actually sets up new companies to at least have a chance of success. Otherwise, you think about it, Activision's gonna be like, we're only gonna be on the cloud streaming platform that offers us the most money. And that's not gonna be some small European upstart trying to get into the cloud gaming arena. And so that is why the EU was like, we think this is good. Now, what happens after 10 years? Well, that's a great question, because they could just say, look, we're going to charge some outrageous fees. But I think the bet, at least in the EU, is that if a cloud gaming company cannot establish itself within a 10-year period, then it's probably not going to be a massive player just in general, but at least they're giving it a chance. In the UK, they say like that 10-year needs to be forever, effectively. And Microsoft, I don't think, was willing to agree to that, because forever, my friends, is a very long time. One might even say it is indefinite. So, this is getting spicy. This is really getting nitty gritty. Some real tough negotiations going to be happening here. A lot of public bargaining is sometimes it's referred to, which is Brad Smith's publicly saying, I'm going to the UK. That's also Bloomberg writing out saying Microsoft might just pull out of the UK. And so it's public bargaining, to get the headlines out there, not to make people scared. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a scare tactic, but it's more of a pressure tactic about what potentially could happen if everybody else on the planet approves the Activision acquisition, and the UK CMA just sits there and just says, nope, there is no way this is ever going to happen. And Microsoft is saying, like, look, then we will consider pulling out, because that is how important Microsoft believes it is to their long-term vision of what they're trying to achieve. I mean, $70 billion is an astronomical amount of money, considering Microsoft's building out all these data centers. It used to be, it's probably more than that now. It used to be about $1 billion a data center. Well, it's probably more than that now when you're buying all these series GPUs from NVIDIA, whatever. That's a sidetrack. So we will just have to wait and see, my friends. It will be, I don't know if we expect to hear anything next week, but keep in mind, the CMA is trying to drag this out. Remember, they wanted to go on for a couple months. Microsoft kind of accused them and says, hey, that's not really legit. And so we shall see. We shall see. Just like you should keep it subscribed here so you can see if there's any other BS on this channel besides me.